So Richard Knudson here again. Thanks everybody for joining. Couple of things about the CRM User Group meeting for April. First of all, we are once again in person here at the headquarters of the far-flung Millennium Corporation here in beautiful Wheaton, Illinois. And Kevin Harrell and the Millennium crew hosting once again the in-person part. So today's agenda, I thought I'd start with a quick recap of Convergence. For those of you that weren't aware of that, it's the big Dynamics show. I was just in Atlanta over the last weekend, so I'll talk a little bit about, I think, some of the most important things from the CRM standpoint for that. The main topic for today's meeting is going to be presented by Rhett Thompson, who is the co-founder of CoreMotives. And Rhett's going to present on a pretty exciting product. I've been using CoreMotives recently. Some of you may have seen a couple of the articles that I've written about it. And it's in a hot category, a newly competitive landscape in that space. There were a lot of vendors at Convergence that had some interesting solutions in this, and CoreMotives is certainly one of them, and it's the one that I'm using. Rhett's going to talk about that. Get to that in a second, but let me just do kind of a quick, admittedly CRM-centric viewpoint of what Convergence was all about. Again, it's not just about Dynamics CRM. All the other ERP products are well represented there. And it's an interesting show from another standpoint too, in that I think it's one of the few Microsoft shows that is roughly equal parts customer and partner. So it's a good mix of people, and I thought it was a really good show. Certainly, the big message of the show was that Microsoft's big bet, all in when it comes to cloud computing. If you missed that at the show, you definitely were not paying attention, because I think every presentation had to at least make reference to that term all in at least once. A couple of the speakers I saw characterize cloud computing as equally important as the move to the graphical user interface and the web browser and the whole internet phenomenon. So it's a big bet, and certainly our favorite CRM is I'd consider it the poster child application for Microsoft's cloud efforts. And the May 2010 service update was announced at Convergence. If you're a user of CRM Online, you'll by now have started to appreciate these the service updates, which come about every 6 months or so, and often include some pretty important new functionality, and I'll talk a little bit about some of that next. After the cloud theme, probably the next, at least from my standpoint, from a CRM standpoint, social CRM, the whole discussion of how social media, Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube, all those things, how they impact our organizational CRM efforts. I thought that was the next biggest theme. And a couple of comments on those two things. A couple of things about the May 2010 service update. For a long time, multiple language support has only been available in Dynamics CRM for on-premise. And personally, I really like the way that was implemented. I think they've done a really good job with that. But it was not available until the May 2010 service update for Dynamics CRM Online. So you had to have on-premise, you had to install language packs. And the May 2010 service update is apparently going to be done in installments, because I just discovered today that multiple language support is available now in Dynamics CRM Online. I didn't even know that it was there, and that's one interesting thing about cloud computing, I'll tell you, is that these new features, when you're in the cloud, they kind of sometimes just happen. That's one of them. The other things that are going to be in the service update, and I think these are probably the main ones, there's going to be at least one other accelerator that's going to be available for CRM Online, and that's this e-service. It's essentially a customer portal that you can set up, and there are some interesting opportunities for that. One of the things that occurred to me we could do is use it for the user group. The user group, Dynamics CRM usergroup.com website, is currently on WordPress, and I think the e-service accelerator for CRM Online may be appropriate for managing the user group, and hopefully we can do that. Last bullet point here, the new SDK. So there's a new SDK that's going to come out, I guess, as part of it's going to come out in May. Technically, it's not part of the service update. The way I understand it, it's just one SDK that's going to be released for both Dynamics CRM Online and Dynamics CRM On-Premise. But the big win here is that it's going to include support for Azure-based development. So for a long time, Dynamics CRM Online has been kind of crippled compared to on-premise, because you couldn't do plugins, you couldn't do custom workflows, you couldn't do, you know, custom HTML pages unless you just put them somewhere else. But so built-in support for Azure-based development, I think that's going to open up a lot of possibilities for Dynamics CRM Online. So I think those are probably the most important topics. And if we get a chance, we'll take a look at the multi-language support in a little bit. I mentioned earlier that's actually been slipped into the product now. And the other big thing I mentioned was social CRM. I thought this was one of the key themes of the show. And by the way, if you want a good recap of what happened over the last few days in Atlanta, you could just go to Twitter and search for pound sign, what my old school self calls it. Twitter people call it a hashtag. Search for hashtag CONV10. It's all caps, and you'll get all the tweets that were put out over the course of the last week or so that had to do with Convergence. So social CRM, well, you could think of it in terms of as a way of automating your personal relationships, you know, make them more efficient so you have more time for business. You could think of augmenting workflows with fun flows, for example. But the serious point that I want to make is that while social media, you know, things like Facebook is probably the best example of something that a lot of people use for personal profile and friendship and things like that. Obviously, call it, you know, friending somebody on Facebook. It's probably not a coincidence that they use that word. If you think of them as exclusively personal, you're going to miss a lot of important applications for business. And from my, again, CRM-centric view of the world, the way I think of these things, the opportunity that I see here, I see a really big opportunity. Things like subscribers to my YouTube channel, or people that are fans on my Facebook pages, people that I'm connected with on LinkedIn, obviously people that follow me on Twitter, people that subscribe up on my blog on WordPress. Those are all potentially important customers or potential customers or influencers, people that might be important for me to keep in touch with in a business standpoint. And for me, and I think for a lot of people that have an organizational commitment to something like Microsoft Dynamics CRM, the CRM, that's the hub of this wheel for me. So the challenge is, how do I efficiently leverage the connections that these tools let you make now and do something structured way with those people, which again for me is creating, say, contact records in Dynamics CRM ultimately. There are plenty of challenges with that, and again, it's not the only way to think of it, but it was definitely, I thought this was one of the more interesting aspects of Convergence, is how all these different businesses